Managerial success requires the ability to negotiate. Not my words, those are the words of Harvard Business School. Of course, there are many styles of negotiation in politics and in business. One is the madman theory, as practiced by the former American President Nixon in the early 1970s. The strategy was to make the leaders of hostile communist bloc nations think Nixon was irrational and volatile. The idea being that those leaders would then avoid provoking the United States, fearing an unpredictable American response. Well, President Donald Trump is not just a politician, but also a businessman. And in the past few weeks, he's had some tough words for North Korea over its nuclear threat, promising to, among other things, unleash fire and fury on the country. We can speak now to two leading trainers in negotiation skills. Calum Coburn is of the Negotiation Experts and joins us from Sydney in Australia. McCarthy is of the Resource Development Centre here in the UK. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Manuela.
Calum, if I could start with you, is Trump playing the madman theory of negotiations here?
It's really hard to know what his agenda is, but it just looks like standard brinksmanship to us, where he's not the first world leader to make blustering comments to posture and to push diplomacy into the back foot to see what response he gets. I think he's just trying to score points, and it also looks quite competitive. You mentioned the styles of negotiation earlier. If we draw the parallel to business life, he's trying to draw a tactical advantage. He's entering the fray and he's being bellicose. So I don't know that we know too much at this stage. He's handed it down to his generals, who's making similar comments. I'm curious to see how it plays out. I very much doubt it'll come to kinetic war.
So you don't believe that there's something deliberate about it?
It might be deliberate, it might be planned. I'm curious to talk with Alan about what we can learn in terms of parallels to the business world, because I just see two nations blustering. In fact, it's not really North Korea versus America. It's really China versus the US. They're two of the world's biggest economies, and North Korea is China's production ground. They've put in an incredible amount of infrastructure and produced a large amount of Chinese production at a lower cost. And that's the real war going on here. It's a trade war, and North Korea is part of the playground.
Alan, when it comes to negotiating in business, is this a strategy that you would see in the business world?
Well, it is, but we use the term negotiation very widely in business and politics. And everything I've seen, heard and read about President Trump says that he's a deal maker. Even his book says it's about the art of the deal. And the definition of negotiation is the resolution of conflict by mutual compromise. I mean, this means the other party gets something when we conclude the resolution. At the result of a win-win, it means you can get back to that person and you can deal with them again. But nothing that I can see about President Trump's style says he cares about whether or not he deals with them again. Now, that's fine in business. There's always another deal. But is there always another nation state to deal with?
So in this sense, the way you're describing it there, his background in business is actually detrimental as a politician.
Well, I certainly don't think it's helpful when you're thinking about diplomacy and world state negotiations. I'm not totally sure how many people would want to go back and do business with Mr. Trump before he was president. And we can't burn world states on this case, but you can lose a partner easily.
It's curious because the word is that he has a reputation as a businessman for being quite charming when he wants to be.
Well, I think charm is part of the sales front. What you do is you charm people to get what you want, and then when you've got it, you walk away. And in many of the deals that Mr. Trump did with branding deals, what happened was that he got all the money and people didn't then get their return on their investment initially. I'm thinking about some of the hotels, Trump Steaks, Trump University. These things just died behind him. Will the university world in the US allow him to open another one? I don't know. I think he may have ruined that relationship.
Calum, when you face somebody like President Trump across the negotiating table, how do you deal with them?
Do you know, many of our clients, Alan may testify to the same, they work in different industries. We deal across many different industries, and we find that there's different styles of negotiations that apply in different industries. So if Trump, coming from the property market, wants to use a competitive tactical style with a lot of charm when things are going his way and threats when they're not, that's just a face, a persona. What you need to do is look past that and say, what advantage does this cede me? And a competitive negotiator, usually their disadvantage is they haven't done their preparation. They haven't asked their questions. He hadn't sought the advice of his aides leads, if you just look at the conversations early into his tenure with the Australian and the Mexican premiers, he didn't do his homework. He wasn't prepared. And granted, that was early in his office, and maybe now he's matured, but probably that leopard hasn't changed its spots. So that could cede you the advantage. If my clients were up against Trump, I would tell them to do their homework and get as much information as possible, get their research done, because preparation is the most important advantage that they can grab for themselves in any negotiation, and that's a disadvantage on Trump's side.
Alan, would you agree?
I totally agree about the preparation side. It's well-known fact that you will spend a day in preparation for 15 minutes in conversation in any negotiation. And anyone who doesn't do that realises 20 minutes into their first conversation, they should have thought more before they open their mouth. I like the idea of the competitive style, which comes from the business world, which, as Calum says, we see that a lot. But they don't always win everything they want. Now, of course, again, in a business deal, you can always go back and you can reprofile that to tell your boss that you've got this deal and you've got that. But on the world stage, who's President Trump going to rationalise with? And the Harvard negotiation model that you mentioned earlier on says there are three types of negotiator. There's hard, principled and soft. Now, soft doesn't mean weak. Soft means intelligent and considerate. Principled is exactly that, where we're dealing with equanimity. Hard is what Mr. Trump is, and he goes in competitive to win every single time, even when it's not appropriate. And I think Calum will tell you there are times when it is more graceful in a long-term relationship to actually leave something on the table for the other party while still walking away with something of value to yourself.
Okay. Thanks very much. Alan McCarthy there of the Resource Development Centre here in the UK. Also there was Calum Coburn of the Negotiation Experts in Sydney.